We are in this together.
You have gifts that I don't have, and I have gifts that you don't have.
That we must see. Now is the time, because it's when we all get together that we will make the changes that we must make. We are the world.
Welcome to Malcolm and We, brought to you exclusively on MalcolmPresents.com, a streaming network that brings you shows that other stations don't bring you. Anyway, we'd like to welcome Jana Larson, who's my co-host, and Peter Horth from the Poor People campaign. Anyway, Jana, take over.
All right, Malcolm, and thank you, Peter, for being here. Peter Horth is the outreach leader for the Ohio chapter of the Poor People's Campaign. He is also a parish associate for the Fairmont Presbyterian Church in Cleveland. The Poor People's Campaign is also known as the National Call for Moral Revival. There are chapters all over the USA, and I think Ohio has 2 or 3 chapters for the different parts of the state. And the goal of Poor People's Campaign, also known as PPC, is to build a broad and deep movement to bring marginalized voices to those who should hear. Thank you for being here, Peter, and telling us about what's going on with Poor People's Campaign. I know you've been very, very busy, and I certainly see Reverend Barber on MSNBC quite a bit, and I am so glad that they let him speak, because he's such a phenomenal speaker, and PPC does so much for all of us. So welcome.
Thank you. Good to be here.
What would you like to talk about?
Well, Dr. Barber is quite a figure, and he's recently retired from his church in North Carolina and is now heading up a department in Yale Divinity School in Connecticut. And it's about organizing people to be Poor People's Campaign organizers that are ministers. Although we also have advocates that are part of our campaign, and then also people that are impacted people as well. So he's been just a real towering force for our organization. And also Dr. Liz Theo-Harris, who's a professor at Union Theological Seminary. And she wrote a very influential book called critiquing this idea that the poor we will always have with us. So those are our co-chairs.
What is your goal? I mean, do you have a goal that you want to attain within a certain period?
Our goal is a third moral reconstruction. So the first moral reconstruction was the reconstruction after the Civil War. It was a remarkable period in our history when Black and white in the South joined together and actually had a majority in states in the South, and implemented some of the most progressive laws that we've ever had. And then with the violent overthrow of that movement with Jim Crow era, then that fell into decline. So there's no longer, that revival died out. But then in the 60s, we would argue that there was a moral revival again, and that was seen with mostly the Black church led in the South with Dr. King, but not only Dr. King, it was just these popped up all over the place. The Student Nonviolent Committee, even the NAACP, lots of different organizations just brought about a great moral revival in our country that culminated in the Voting Rights Act and the Civil Rights Act and so forth. So that was the second moral reconstruction, and we're saying now that the time is ripe for a third reconstruction, and that's what we're trying to bring about. And so to answer your question, as far as it definitely morally based, but there's just certain things that we need to do to end poverty in the United States. It's Poor People's Campaign. We want to end poverty, and that's certainly doable. Just one little indication of that. During the COVID time, there was an expansion of the child tax credit, And as a result of that, it's just like, this is just simple mathematics. 3.7 children were raised out of poverty from that, just that expansion of the child tax credit. And then also the expansion of Medicaid did wonders as well during the COVID outbreak. And as a result of that, many more people got health coverage that they should have gotten. So there was, and now Medicaid is kind of retrenching because COVID is apparently over. And so there's a threat of maybe 12 to 15 million people losing their Medicaid, 15 to 18 million people losing their Medicaid coverage.
Yeah.
So we want to end poverty.
Now, when you were talking about poverty and the instances you gave of the three stages, it seems like most of that was actually concentrating on Black America. Now, how have you integrated that with which is actually a major portion of our population was the Spanish, the Latino population, and of also, which we shouldn't do, is the poor white folks.
That's right.
So how do you integrate the three groups?
Yeah, and that's the critical thing, and we call it moral fusion, that we bring people together who have seemingly opposite goals or separate goals, but when we bring them together, there's a moral fusion, and we bring them all together. So with regards to the child tax credit, although certainly Asian and Hispanic, Latino, and African-American children were brought out of the poverty because of the expansion of the child tax credit, the majority, the largest number were white children. So there's just incredible bonds of connection there. So there is a very much a common flow. And if you go back to the Civil War days, it's if you look at the basic per capita asset amount of individuals living in the South, it was much, much higher than it was in the North. It was like, 2,000 per person, not including slaves, of course. While it's more like $600 on average in the North. So again, it may appear that it's for a Black movement, but it really benefits white as well as Hispanic and Asian people.
Now, maybe you can call me a cynic, but anytime I hear a group that's actually led by the church groups, by ministers, I always get a little leery that they are not only are they trying to do what they're doing, as you say, which is great, but they're also trying to lay the morality of their church and the morality of their religion to these groups. Mm-hmm. And how does your group that? Do you have to be affiliated with the church, or do you have to be a religious person, or do you even have to believe in God?
No, that's right. We have a lot of Unitarians, which are pretty wide open, and we do not have to believe in God by any means. It's more of a sense of justice. I think we're organized under the principle of justice. That's what brings us together. So, but I know personally that people in the movement that do not have very negative impressions of the church. So I don't know if they have negative, but they don't have anything to do with the church per se, but they do believe in justice. So they're coming together, especially our LGBTQIA individuals too. They're it's difficult for them to warm to the church a lot of times.
Yeah, and it's social justice, not just justice, which I think is brings it even more to what it means to the people. And as you myself, I know that is a lot of what is talked about. Now, so I used to be a member on the coordinating committee, and well, I mean, I was too busy. So I had to stick with what I was already doing, but I'm still connected. And I remember before when we did the big texting campaign, and so many people, their negative reaction was like, "Hey, are you calling me a poor person? I'm not a poor person," and so when I think of the name Poor People's Campaign, Can you explain why it's called that and not like the Moral Fusion campaign?
Sure. Yeah. No, that's a good point. And I've met that issue with a lot of people, but historically it was named the Poor People's Campaign in 1968. Dr. King, as part of the continuation of his March on Washington and Selma and so forth, wanted to have a movement where it was led by poor people. So unfortunately, that can have negative connotations, and it takes a lot of courage to stand up to that. But that was where the name originally came from, and I think out of loyalty to that movement, we keep that name. And I have to say, when we were in Washington just in June for the Moral Action Congress, we had about 800 people there, and we went to Senate offices and congressional representative offices and so forth. And I went to Chantel Brown's office and talked to a representative there, and we had two people that were admittedly, honestly, just saying, hey, I get these benefits and we need more, and I have friends who need these benefits, and we need more programs that address concerns of people myself. And they just spoke with incredible moral authority. So I think that the real moral authority lies with them, not with me as an advocate or with religious leaders.
Yeah.
Well, and there are so many myths about what makes a person poor, and
That's
and
right.
and like with welfare and the actual facts, and so it's so hard to work against. And another comment that I would get back from people was like, well, if poor people just went to work, then they wouldn't be poor, and that is so ignorant.
Mhm.
And
Right.
especially against a segment of the population, women, who become poor
Mhm.
through divorce, domestic violence, and having to leave their homes, take care of the family, and raise, have a job. And how do you do that? Oh, I mean, they're trying. It's not like they're sitting around eating bonbons and watching soap operas all day. And oh, I think I'll
Mhm.
just be poor so I can get benefits. It's not easy to get benefits.
Mhm.
It's very difficult to prove how poor you are. And I mean, unless you've been through it, you have no idea.
Well,
Plus,
have
people
you?
are,
No,
I was just
continue.
going to say how blinded people are by inherited privilege. So that you kind of you've been born on third base and thought you hit a triple. So I mean, I've been a benefit of privilege, white privilege, male privilege. I was just amazed how many jobs I've been able to get just through white affirmative action. So it just amazes me how strong and courageous impacted people are when it comes to dealing with these issues.
Right. What turns me off is again going back to that religious aspect of it. A lot of the religious groups who are, and not only in this country, but who are anti-immigration, anti-letting these people in, and they consider themselves Christians or Catholics, and none of them,
Anti-Semitic. I mean, that's just
and yeah, but
horrible.
none of them follow the tenets of Christ. I mean, if
No,
they would read the Bible, I mean, Christ is the one that would. And I'm Jewish, but I know, like during the holidays, and we go to temple, and they talk about
Mhm.
how you're supposed to help your brother, how you're supposed, if somebody needs food, that you help feed them. You even invite them over. Nowadays, you invite them over your house, and even you don't have enough for your family, you divide, but you help people, you clothe people. And in this day and age, it's no, let's throw them out.
Mhm.
That's
Right.
what that's what gives religion a bad group. As I said back in the Poor People campaign, that's what rang a bell. I remember being involved in the civil rights movement
Exactly.
in the 60s.
Mhm.
And how do you go about this? I mean, do you basically are trying to create legislation in various states or nationally with
Yeah, so we definitely are politically active, and I think the bigger picture, though, is that we want to change the narrative so that the narrative isn't about just what you described about how, the borders are porous and poor people are lazy, et cetera, but to just tell a story from the point of view of poor people and how, because their yard was poisoned with lead and their child had lead toxic syndrome or whatever, that they, their whole life was just knocked out of whack, and just tell that story and get that story out there, and then the legislation will follow. So that's what we're really striving to do. That's why we had a People's Assembly in June of 2022, while we're going to have another People's Assembly in June of 2024 to try to just bring front and center the world from the point of view of poor impacted people.
Well, and Ohio is a tough state to do that in. I mean, Ohio's got some problems.
Well,
I mean, Ohio too, but I mean, we just recently, Democracy won with issue 1 not passing, which was good, but.
Well, I think 85% of the women voted. I don't know what, I heard that 85 to 88% of women who never voted before voted because they had this to change how to change the Constitution in the next election.
Yeah, and my county even was very well represented in voting, and I think they had some really some unique social media campaigns that really worked too. But are there in the bluer states, the purple states, are they having more luck getting making legislative impact as compared to Ohio? I mean, it just seemed like we're just constantly knocking our head against a wall trying to get someone to pay attention.
Yeah, no, I've heard some good rumblings in Wisconsin and Michigan, but in Ohio, you're right. I think the state is so gerrymandered, and the supermajority that exists in the state House is just a problem. And even when we passed an amendment saying that the gerrymandering was unconstitutional, they just was ignored, and so it's we're really up against it here.
Yeah, we really are.
Now, on a practical matter, how do you try to reach the legislators? Do you deal with the people trying to call them up? Are you getting a crusade of the so-called the poor, the people that you're aiming for? Do you do marches? Do you do meetings? How do you contact them?
Yeah, so I'm glad you asked that question. So we have a database of 7,200 people on our Action Network. And then, of course, a lot of people aren't up to speed with computers and emails and so forth. So we have additional people on top of that. But so in June, we went to all the legislative offices in Washington, D.C. for all the states. This February, we're going to have a mass gatherings in each state capital, and it'll all be coordinated to make an impact. But we also haven't really, this hasn't come to fruition yet, but we want to have committees of people that are just continually monitoring every representative in the State House of Ohio and every representative in Washington, D.C. for Ohio, and just continually getting our agenda out there. So that's every time they turn around, they're going to expect us to be there because we'll be there. So when we were there in Washington, D.C., we stopped in at every congressional office, and that was a start. But so that's one thing we're definitely searching for help with. You can email me at peterchorth@gmail.com. But that would be something that we really need help with.
Yeah. Now you have the breakdown of the organization. You're Ohio. So does each state have its own group?
That's right.
And then you meet nationally. Is there a national headquarters?
Yes. So there's definitely a strong national team, and that's, I believe, in North Carolina, and then Dr. Barber's in North Carolina, and then Lizzie O'Harris, I believe, is probably the Caro Center. But there's a strong national organization, and then there's each state has like their own chapter. So So, and that's that they'll have their own. We're a movement, not an organization, but each state will have their own chapter, and then we meet together.
Does
But you
he
also
speak-
have sections, like we were in the northeast
right.
Ohio, and then there's the southern, and I forget I forget all of them.
Yeah.
But then we also like work with, like in Ohio, but we would work with Kentucky too.
Right.
And
So you work with
neighboring-
several states in the same area.
Yes.
Yeah, I think
Nah.
they're in PPCs in every state except what, Arizona, or
Mhm.
was Arizona getting a chapter together? I forget.
I hope they're in Hawaii and they need help
Ugh.
Yeah.
with the fires.
Yeah. I
and
hope so.
whatnot.
Yeah, we can go there.
But how do you finance your group?
Yeah, so we get a lot of funding from churches, but for us to go to Washington DC for like the mass assembly we had in 2022, it costs about 5,000 per bus. So, and that's just maybe 50 people. So, and we want to get like, 1 million people there. But we get money from foundations, from churches, from individuals, from just individual fundraisers that we can have. So that's that. And then Dr. Barber and Leslie O'Harris have a very active speaking circuit. And I don't know if I imagine they get, tens of thousands of dollars for their speaking engagements. And that a lot of that money, I imagine, goes to the Poor People's Campaign.
Yeah, I'm sure you're a recognized charity. But
Yes.
is there email address that people could donate if they're listening to the show?
Yeah. If you go to let's see here, Ryan's going to kill me for not having this at my fingertips. But
Give that to Yana, at
Yeah,
the end of the show, and we'll post it.
okay.
yeah, and it's after this show, we'll go to Malcolm's website, which is malcolmpresents.com, and it also goes to YouTube. And then we also put it on our Facebook page, Malcolm and We, and then we have a podcast on Buzzsprout. So there are lots of ways
Okay.
for us to spread that
Right.
information.
The only thing I ask of you is at the end of the show or when you get the show, you'll see something that says share. Share
Right.
it with all your
Okay.
things because we work at the rock bottom of we ain't got no funding.
Right.
So what we do is we depend on people to share. And
Right.
it's
That's right.
as you know, from a ground roots type of charity.
Yes. No, you're right. So the Ohio Poor People's Campaign, I'll do some more search, but if you just Google Ohio Poor People's Campaign, then there'll be a donation link at that website. So that would work.
Okay.
Also, Peter, being with We the World as I am,
Yes.
and our 11 Days of Global Unity is coming up in September. And this
Mhm.
year we're collaborating very strongly and co-creatively with the Sign Network, John Reamer, Compassion Games and the Sign Network, and Ben Bowler's Unity Earth, and also with the New York City Climate Week. And so there's going to be lots of opportunities for getting the word out in a more massive way, instead of we all working separately to really come together. So I'd love to have you and Brian come on
Great.
and do a presentation. So I'll get to
Okay.
you about that.
Yeah, that'd be dynamite. That'd be great.
Now as
Yeah,
far as
Yeah.
as far as an individual, let's say you're an individual and you do your donation with not necessarily joining a group, what can you do to help your campaign? Who do we speak to? Like I'm in Los Angeles and who do we speak to? Who do I call up? How do I know the legislation that you're trying to put through?
Yeah. Well, there's a platform on our Ohio webpage, and then also in California, there'd be a California website, and that probably has the same platform for our political positions. And also, if you have a talent like for music, I think that's one of the hallmarks of the Poor People's Campaign is that it uses music to lift people up, to bring the moral arguments to the fore, and it's a powerful part. So if you got to have you have a talent somewhere, that we want to utilize. I think we're a little slower than we should be in utilizing people's talents, but I know there's something that can be done. Just phone calling, networking, social media, that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's what we're trying to do with Malcolm and we. As I say, when
Yeah.
I do, I've been in communications for the last 50 years, and now this is sort of new to me. I've been in radio and television, but this is totally new because the radio and TV, before you put on programming, you have to pass, a litmus of testing, and most of it is based on how much money does it get me.
Right.
This I could do, on bare minimum.
Wow.
And again, with the help of some people like you who will share or tell people about our program, we could reach millions worldwide.
Yeah.
Well, and that's the thing with We the World, is that we can get more global, and we're really trying to reach out to the youth too. And so, and having volunteers from other countries is very helpful that way, for them to have a way to be able to be known. Like if you're in Sri Lanka and you're cleaning up plastic on the beach there, who's going to know about it except the people around there? But when you can connect with a major organizations and everybody can share, and I made up a word called, when you can coalesce, but I'm calling it the coalition of all the silos together to really make a huge difference. And you know what? I mean, Malcolm starting out in, radio and black and white television, how few people you could reach then, but now that we can reach with Zoom and our show.
Yes. That's beautiful. Yeah. And we're thankful that people like Malcolm are doing this. That's for sure. So, but yeah, the world connection, that's just so, you can get down and really depressed, but when you think that someone over in Sri Lanka is doing something that you're in and you're both supporting each other, that's a powerful experience.
Well, you go over to some of the shows that we've had, and thanks to Yana, we've had people, in different parts of the world that in their little village, they're making a difference.
Yes.
And you have all
And
these.
they're making it makes a huge difference. So I was in a webinar. I wasn't, I called it A1, which is steak sauce, but it's AI, artificial. So clearly I'm not with it, but thinking about how to bring AI to a village in Africa. And I said, gosh, I mean, they don't, it's so, they're dealing with such poverty and such withoutness, how can it happen? But then I was thinking, well, I don't know, there's probably a way, and I'm not smart enough to figure it out, but I know a lot of young people who are smart, and they'll probably figure it out.
The whole thing is just taking a little offshoot. The whole thing in like areas of like Africa or poor areas in South America or Asia, people feel isolated. They don't think anybody cares. And actually, this is why the missionaries were good at one time. Going there and showing that somebody cares, but there was always a caveat: if you want our help, you had to.
Yeah.
And but this way, we with this, and I know a lot of the world is connected by the internet, and even in poor villages, they have internet.
They'll have phones. Yeah.
Yeah, they have the internet, and that's becoming more and more, and it's harder to control.
Yep. Yes.
The government can't control it because people can get the internet. It's sort of like Radio Free America was during the World War II. People could get the broadcasts. People could get the casts and these Zooms, and they know that there are people outside of their village that care, that are trying to help. They are not alone in the world.
Yeah.
And this is what I'm trying to do, and this is what you're trying to do, and we're very thankful that there are people like you that are involved and that are doing something. Because
well, Peter
you don't see that on the news anymore.
No. But that's the beauty of working in organizations like these, is you get to meet some really amazing people who are so energetic, and like Peter is so wonderfully kind and compassionate. And it brings me joy to know such
Yeah.
people.
But
Likewise.
Peter,
Yeah.
we're towards an end. Give your email address again where people could reach you if they have questions or
Yeah.
want to find out more.
That would be Peter C. Horth at gmail.com. And so it's Peter and then C as in cat and then Horth, Horth at gmail.com. And I'm the
No capitals
lead.
and no capitals and no abbreviation.
no capitals,
punctuations.
no punctuations, just the at gmail.com.
I get frustrated because when sometimes I'll do something and it won't go through, and oh yeah, we forgot to say it was there's a period at the end of it, or Peter had a capital P.
That's right. No, nothing like that.
Anyway, our time is up.
Okay.
Amazing. It's a half hour, went by very fast. And again, I thank you very much for joining us. I thank you very much for doing what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And remember, and you'll probably get a copy of this within the week, because we do it and I give it to another person that they don't edit it, they put a volunteer that they put their the information on there.
Of course. No, this has been an honor. Thank you. You guys.
And thank you.
We'll all go from me to we.
Right. Coalition. Or was
it
Coalitions?
And you're listening to Malcolm and We on
right.
malcolmpresents.com, a streaming network, which you have this show and many other shows. Anyway, thanks again, Peter, and we'll speak to each other soon.
Sounds good.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
The objective of the organization We the World is to facilitate cooperation on a global scale amongst groups and individuals dedicated to implementing solutions to the many challenges we face on the planet at this time.